Welcome to Strange Serenity. Today we're going on a deep dive into something, well, pretty fascinating, morally speaking at least. We're talking Dexter Morgan.
Ah, Dexter.
Yeah, a serial killer.
Okay.
But here's the twist. He only kills other murderers.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
So that leads us to the big question, right? Can a serial killer, even one with a strict code like Dexter's, ever be considered, morally justifiable? Something to think about, isn't it?
It really makes you examine those lines we draw, those boundaries between good and evil. It's a question that sparks so much debate, and for good reason. You're thrown right into this murky ethical space with Dexter. I mean, he forces you to really look at your own beliefs about justice, about revenge, even about what it means to be good or evil.
Exactly. So to really grasp how complex Dexter is, I think we got to start with his code.
Right.
This code passed down to him by Harry, his adoptive father.
Yeah, Harry, a fascinating character himself.
Harry believed it was the only way to control Dexter's dark passenger. That's the name they give to Dexter's urge to kill. It never goes away.
And the code is interesting. I mean, think about it. It's an attempt to impose order on something that's inherently chaotic.
Order.
Exactly. Murder. Dexter's only going after individuals who are, proven murderers themselves. The ones who, for whatever reason, have slipped through the cracks of the justice system.
So you could almost say that, in his own way, Dexter's trying to right the wrongs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taking care of the trash that society just hasn't dealt with.
Right.
I mean, does that in any way make him, I don't know, a necessary evil? Some twisted kind of like anti-hero?
Well, that's the argument you'll hear from some people. They view Dexter as this vigilante, delivering a rather brutal form of justice.
The kind the system just can't or won't provide.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a real danger in that line of thinking, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I could see that. It begs the question, who gets to decide who's beyond redemption, right? What if, I don't know, what if someone could turn their life around? What if there's a chance for rehabilitation? Or even what if somebody was wrongly accused in the first place?
Yeah.
Dexter's code, well, doesn't seem to leave much room for that kind of nuance, does it?
Not really, no. And, by taking on the role of judge, jury, and executioner all at once, he's really undermining the whole concept of the rule of law. It sets a dangerous precedent. Anyone can just decide who deserves to die based on their own, personal sense of justice.
And that throws due process right out the window.
Yeah, completely. The right to a fair trial, all of that, gone.
There are definitely some serious issues there. But, okay, let's not forget about the whole psychology of Dexter.
Right.
His past, I mean, it's pretty intense. He saw his mother brutally murdered when he was just a kid. There's no question that kind of trauma had to shape him.
Yeah, of course.
So could this dark passenger, could it be a direct result of what he went through? Is it even something he can control?
Now, those are the questions that make it all so complicated. Trauma can do a number on someone's mind, no doubt, but we have to remember that so many people experience terrible things and they don't become killers, right? What makes Dexter unique, I think, is this dark passenger. It really is like some kind of separate entity just living inside him, this constant urge to kill.
Yeah, you almost get that sense from him. And that makes me think of another argument I've heard, that Dexter's code, maybe it's a form of harm reduction, a way to, I don't know, manage this dark impulse, keep him from just spiraling into indiscriminate violence. It's like he's got this outlet, disturbing as it is, but it's focused.
That's an interesting way to put it. You could compare it to an addict trying to manage their substance abuse, trying to control it.
Exactly. It's like he's desperately trying to find some kind of order in his own internal chaos, to hold on to a little piece of his humanity, even with all that darkness inside. It really is something to think about.
Oh, for sure. I think we're just scratching the surface here, though.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to unpack when you think about Dexter's motivations, the consequences of everything he does. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, and I think to truly get a sense of Dexter's sense of morality or lack thereof, we need to consider the impact he has on the people around him. I mean, especially Deborah, his sister.
Right, Deborah. Her story is critical here.
She's so dedicated to justice,
Yeah.
She's a detective. But she has absolutely no idea that her brother is this serial killer.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
I mean, can you imagine what that does to her? The betrayal, the confusion, the fear. It must take a huge psychological toll.
It really highlights how Dexter's choices have these ripple effects. They go far beyond him. And often it's the people closest to him who get hurt the most.
And it's not just Deborah. Think about Sergeant Oakes, the detective who got suspicious of Dexter.
Yep.
The one who ended up paying the ultimate price for getting too close to the truth. Or Rita, Dexter's wife, who was dragged into his world and met a horrible end, even though she was completely innocent.
Those cases really drive home how dangerous Dexter's double life is. He can build his code, be as careful as he thinks he is, but he can't control how his actions will impact other people. Innocent people will always get caught in the crossfire.
It makes you wonder, even if Dexter believes he's doing some kind of good, does the end justify the means? Can he ever really reconcile what he's doing with the pain he causes?
These are the questions we're going to keep digging into as we go further into Dexter's world. It's a complex moral landscape, that's for sure. It's like Dexter, in a way, throws a light on the flaws in our justice system. He becomes this embodiment of like the frustration so many of us feel when we see criminals getting away with things. They exploit loopholes or there's corruption protecting them and they escape any real consequences.
Yeah, it's that feeling, right? When you know someone deserves to be punished, but the system just lets them walk free. And then Dexter steps in. He's like this twisted answer to that feeling of helplessness.
Right. He becomes a symbol of that vigilante justice. It taps into that really primal need for, I don't know, payback, I guess. But indulging in that fantasy, it can be pretty dangerous.
For sure. I mean, if everybody started taking the law into their own hands, well, society would just fall apart. It's a slippery slope from vigilante justice to complete chaos.
And that's the thing, right? Dexter might think he's above the system, but his actions actually weaken the whole foundation of a just society. I mean, he's not the cure, he's a symptom of the problem.
But I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but couldn't you argue that in some cases, what Dexter does actually makes the world a little safer? He's taking out people who are already proven dangerous.
Okay, but that argument kind of depends on Dexter always being right, doesn't it? It assumes he never makes a mistake, which, let's be real, he's human. He can be biased, manipulated, he could misinterpret evidence.
You're right, he's not perfect. And even if he was, there's that bigger question. Does anyone, even with a code like Dexter's, have the right to decide who lives and dies? It's almost like playing God.
Yeah, that's the heart of it all, isn't it? Dexter really pushes us to look at our own beliefs about justice, about individual rights versus the needs of society. It gets messy, it's uncomfortable, and there are no easy answers.
It's almost like, looking in a mirror, a dark mirror, and seeing something we don't necessarily like, but it's there. It's forcing us to acknowledge that darkness exists within us, within our systems.
Exactly. That vigilante justice might feel good, might appeal to something primal, but it's a false solution.
So we can understand why Dexter does what he does. We can even sympathize with his twisted goal of making the world safer, but we can't condone it.
Right. I think that's a key takeaway here. Dexter's whole story is a cautionary tale. It reminds us that even good intentions can't justify horrific acts, and sometimes the hardest thing is to trust the system, even with all its flaws, instead of just, I don't know, taking justice into our own hands.
It's true. But we can't forget about Dexter's personal life, can we? I mean, he is a killer, but he seems to genuinely care for some people. It's almost like there are two sides to him.
That's what makes Dexter so fascinating. You have this man capable of real affection, loyalty, even tenderness. But all of that exists alongside this, brutal capacity for violence. He's a loving brother to Deborah, a dedicated husband to Rita. He's protective of Harrison, his son. But he's also this cold, calculating killer.
So is it possible to be both? Can someone truly love and empathize while also, taking lives the way Dexter does?
It's a tough question. There's no easy answer. And I think it's something we have to consider as we explore who Dexter really is, what's going on inside his mind. Some argue that his love for Deborah, for the others, it's proof that there's humanity in him.
A bit of light in all that darkness.
Yeah, but others would say that those relationships, they're built on lies and deception, that they're ultimately, tainted by his secret life.
That's a good point. Because think about Rita. She was innocent, but she got pulled into Dexter's world, and in the end, it cost her her life. It's tragic.
It really shows how Dexter can't keep those parts of his life separate. The darkness, it bleeds into his relationships, and it leaves a trail of destruction.
So even if Dexter is capable of love, the question is it real? Or is it twisted, distorted by the secrets he keeps and the darkness he carries with him?
That's definitely something to think about. I think the way he handles those relationships, the choices he makes, it tells us a lot about who he really is deep down.
It really is strange how Dexter can be so connected to people like Deborah and Rita, but at the same time so distant. He cares, but he's also living this lie.
It's like this constant battle he's fighting. He wants those close relationships, those connections. But that dark passenger, it makes it almost impossible for him to be truly open and honest. It's like he's always hiding behind a mask.
And the people he cares about, well, they get pulled into this web of secrets, and it doesn't end well for a lot of them.
No, it doesn't. Rita, she's the perfect example. This bright light in Dexter's life, representing everything he wants, that normal family. But she was innocent, and that made her so vulnerable to his dark side.
Dexter always said he was protecting her by doing what he did, but in reality, that double life destroyed her. It's heartbreaking.
It makes you think, can love even exist when there's so much deception? Can you build a real relationship on a foundation of lies? I don't know.
It's hard to see how it could be anything but, well, tainted. Even if Dexter feels love, it's all twisted up with that darkness inside him.
And that brings us back to where we started, doesn't it? Can someone who kills, even if they have a code, ever be considered morally right?
We've really dug deep here. All those psychological layers, the impact on the people in his life, the big philosophical questions Dexter raises. So after all this, where do you stand? Is he a monster, a tragic hero, something else entirely?
I think that's the brilliance of Dexter. There's no simple answer. You can't just put him in a box. He makes us look at our own morals, our own ideas about good and evil. He really challenges us.
He's like a mirror, reflecting back all our fears and beliefs about justice. It's unsettling, but it's thought-provoking.
I agree. That's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. We've broken down his code, looked at why he does what he does, seen how his actions affect others. But in the end, you have to decide for yourself.
Dexter Morgan, monster, savior, or maybe something much more complicated. We'll leave you to ponder that.
Thanks for joining us on Strange Serenity. We hope this look into Dexter's morality has given you something to think about. Maybe it's even made you question some of your own beliefs.
Yeah, because sometimes, even in the darkest parts of the human mind, you can find some unexpected truths. So until next time, keep exploring those gray areas, keep asking the tough questions, and keep searching for your own strange serenity.